This is the last time 24-year-old Carson Sistrunk was seen alive. Not long after this moment, he would disappear without explanation. His family would report him missing after he suddenly stopped answering calls and failed to show up for work. At first, it looked like a routine missing person case, but as investigators retraced Carson's final hours, they began uncovering a series of clues that pointed to something far more sinister. On September 7, 2022, an oil field worker was driving his usual route through a remote stretch of Jefferson Davis County, Mississippi, when something near one of the pump sites caught his attention. A set of tire trucks veered off the dirt road and cut toward the bush. They didn't belong to any vehicle assigned to the field. Curious, he followed them to the edge of a gravel lot, but the tracks continued past it, reversing into a thick wall of kudzu vines. There, at the tree line where the oil field ended and the woods began, a body lay in the grass, partially concealed by the overgrowth. Decomposition had already taken hold, and flies and maggots covered the remains. Positive identification by sight alone was not possible, so the body was transported to the state medical examiner's office for an autopsy and formal identification through fingerprint analysis. The dead man was 24-year-old Carson Monroe Sistrunk from Pearl, Mississippi. The cause of death was multiple gunshot wounds, 2 to the chest and 1 to the head. All 3 bullets had entered at an upright angle, traveling from front to back. That trajectory carried a specific meaning. The shooter had been positioned below Carson at the time of the attack, firing upward. This indicated Carson was seated on an elevated surface when he was shot. The bullets were recovered only in fragments, but forensic analysis determined they came from a 9mm firearm. There was no evidence of a physical struggle at the scene. Carson, at 6'4" and roughly 300 pounds, showed no signs of having fought back. The evidence indicated that he had no warning before he was shot. The question now was not just who killed Carson Sistrunk, but how his body ended up at an oil well site miles from anywhere. The trail that led investigators to that site began 3 days earlier. On the afternoon of Sunday, September 4, 2022, Carson Sistrunk showered, got dressed, and told his father he was heading out to meet someone. He climbed into his Ford Raptor and drove south toward New Hebron, Mississippi, roughly 51 miles from his home in Pearl. His mother, Darlene Sistrunk, had been in Texas that weekend, attending a family wedding. She returned home Monday evening to find Carson's truck missing from the property. At approximately 7:38 p.m., she sent him a text asking if he was on his way back. There was no reply, and when she called, the phone went straight to voicemail. She stayed up through the night trying to reach him, but by Tuesday morning, Carson had still not returned home or made contact with anyone in the family. That same morning, Carson failed to show up for his shift at Deployed Resources, where he worked as a welder. For a man known across his circles as dependable and punctual, his silence was deeply alarming. Something was wrong, and Darlene was not going to wait to find out what. She immediately drove to the Rankin County Sheriff's Department and filed a missing person report. She told deputies that Carson had been recently talking to a girl on Snapchat and had likely gone to meet her that weekend. Deputies launched standard procedures, checking local hospitals and jails across the region, but every lead came back empty. Law enforcement applied for an extringent circumstance warrant to ping Carson's cell phone. The last signal placed the phone in the New Hebron area. An alert was then issued for Carson's Ford Raptor, described as silver with a distinctive darker colored hood that made it easy to identify. Darlene did not wait for the investigation to move on its own. She posted photos of Carson and his truck on Facebook, asking the community for any information. The response was immediate, with hundreds of people sharing the posts and reporting possible sightings of the truck across multiple towns in the region. One of those sightings would prove to be exactly right. A deputy from the Lawrence County Sheriff's Department spotted the Ford Raptor at the Old Hebron Grocery, a small store in the New Hebron area. The truck sat in plain view in the parking area, making no effort at concealment. Several people were gathered around the vehicle when the deputy arrived. Among them was a young woman who had the truck's keys in her pocket. She identified herself as Sierra Inscoe. According to those present, she had been the one driving the vehicle in the days since Carson disappeared. The deputy held position and called for backup to avoid alerting anyone at the scene. When officers approached Inscoe and asked her how she came to possess the truck, her answer came without hesitation. She claimed she had purchased the vehicle from a man she knew only by the name C Money. She produced a handwritten document, supposedly a bill of sale, stating she had paid $16,000 for the Raptor. Officers noted immediately that the document was not legitimate, just words scrawled on a loose piece of paper. Inscoe told officers she had no idea who Carson Sistrunk was and had never met or heard of him. She added that C Money had threatened her and that the truck might have been stolen before it reached her hands. However, she could not provide a real name, a physical description, an address, or any verifiable detail about this person. The men found near the vehicle were questioned separately, and all were cleared. Inscoe alone remained connected to the truck, and the story she was telling had no foundation beneath it. But her words were not the only thing that didn't add up. Officers began a closer inspection of the Ford Raptor while Inscoe was still at the scene. Faint, dried reddish-brown stains were visible along the tailgate, easy to miss at first glance. A more thorough examination revealed additional traces inside the truck bed, on the underside of the bed, on top of the spare tire, and spattered across the rear windshield. It appeared that someone had attempted to wash the bed with a water hose at some point. However, blood had settled into the cracks, seams, and gaps in the metal where water could not easily reach. The cleanup had been incomplete and careless, leaving visible evidence behind. When asked about the stains, Inscoe claimed she had struck a deer while driving. Officers found this explanation difficult to accept. The truck showed no collision damage to the front, sides, or undercarriage, and there was no reasonable way a road strike would deposit blood inside and underneath the bed of a pickup. The distribution of those stains told a specific story when paired with the autopsy findings. The upward wound trajectory confirmed that Carson was shot while seated on the tailgate of his own truck. The splatter on the rear windshield was consistent with the victim struck from below and falling backward into the bed. When Inscoe was later examined, investigators noted she bore no defensive wounds, reinforcing the conclusion that Carson never had the chance to fight back. According to his family, Carson always carried firearms in his vehicle. He kept a gun mounted on the side of the truck and a smaller pistol stored in the center console. No outside weapon was ever recovered or connected to the crime. Inscoe had most likely taken one of Carson's own guns and turned it on him. The truck had told investigators nearly everything. Now they needed the lab to confirm it. Sierra Inscoe was detained on suspicion of vehicle theft and transported to the Rankin County Sheriff's Office. The truck was taken for processing by the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation's Crime Scene Unit. They collected samples from the interior of the truck, the bed, and the undercarriage. Inside the vehicle, they recovered bags containing female clothing with apparent blood splatter on the fabric. Gun parts were also found among the items in the vehicle. All collected evidence was sent to the state crime lab and a private DNA laboratory in Jackson for processing. While forensic teams worked on the evidence, detectives began reconstructing Carson's life. Carson Sistrunk was born on December 16, 1997 in Flowood, Mississippi. Everyone who knew him described the same person, a tender-hearted, open-spirited man who called his mother every day and trusted the people around him without reservation. Carson graduated from high school in 2016 and enrolled in Deakin Mechanic School to study welding. By the age of 24, he held a welding position at Deployed Resources. He was also training as a gunsmith at a local gun range. Outside of work, Carson also began spending more time online, meeting new people through social media. In the weeks before his death, Carson told Darlene he had been talking to a girl on Snapchat. He did not share her full name or detailed plans, but he showed Darlene a photo of her on one occasion. Carson had used the app to meet girls before, and Darlene had no reason to be alarmed. According to her, Carson had met this particular girl more than once before the weekend he disappeared. Local acquaintances in the New Hebron area later confirmed Darlene's account. Several told investigators they had seen Carson with a girl a couple of weeks before the murder, placing the two together well before Labor Day weekend. Snapchat records obtained by investigators confirmed communication between Carson and this girl, though the messages were brief and revealed little beyond plans to meet. That girl was Sierra Inscoe, the 20-year-old drifter detectives had already detained, the same woman who had earlier claimed that she didn't even know Carson. To understand who she was, investigators had to trace her path backward. Sierra Inscoe was born in Nashville, Tennessee, into a household that offered little stability. Her mother was largely absent from her life, and her father was frequently not home. From an early age, Inscoe moved between the homes of friends, family members, and acquaintances, never staying in one place long enough to build a foundation. She drifted through Florida, Tennessee, and eventually Mississippi, picking up odd jobs as a farm and ranch hand along the way. As investigators dug deeper, a more troubling pattern began to emerge. Inscoe lied constantly, and the lies were not small or defensible. They were elaborate connections designed to reshape how people saw her and what they were willing to give her. The trail of lies stretched back years. While living in Gainesville, Florida around 2020, Inscoe claimed to her boyfriend and his circle of friends that she worked as a trauma nurse. She later upgraded the claim, saying she was an emergency room nurse with a bachelor's degree in nursing. She named a specific school, but that institution apparently did not offer a nursing program. No registered nursing license under her name could be found in any state. She had even taken thousands of dollars from this boyfriend to purchase Christmas presents for his family and bought nothing with the money. Days before the holidays, she claimed the gifts were delayed in a shipping container. The lies began to collapse when her boyfriend's friends grew suspicious. One of them, a private investigator by profession, started looking into her claims and found nothing to support them. Rather than face the scrutiny, Inscoe announced that she had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer and left Florida for Tennessee, claiming she needed treatment closer to family. A friend there took her in and cared for her extensively, only to discover over time that the diagnosis was entirely fabricated. Every layer of Inscoe's life, when examined closely, turned out to be hollow. Approximately 3 months before Carson's murder, a Mississippi man named Aaron Smith filed a stolen vehicle report with the Lawrence County Sheriff's Department. Smith had met Inscoe on Facebook, and after she told him she was dealing with landlord problems, he offered her a spare room in his home. For a time, things appeared normal. One night, Inscoe woke up screaming that her mother had been in a serious car accident and that she needed to get to the hospital immediately. Smith had let her use his truck for errands before, so he handed over the keys without hesitation. Inscoe drove away and never came back. When Smith tried to reach her, he found that she had blocked him on Facebook. A formal stolen vehicle report was filed and the truck was eventually recovered, but the person driving it told officers that Inscoe had sold it to him. In the months leading up to Carson's murder, Inscoe told multiple people in her circle that she was going to have a new truck by her 21st birthday. That birthday fell on September 13, 2022, just 2 days after she was arrested. Investigators came to believe that Inscoe had identified Carson through his online profiles, likely because of his Ford Raptor, and deliberately reached out to him on Snapchat. But to prove that theory, investigators needed to determine exactly where Carson had gone that night. They traced Carson's last known financial activity to the New Hebron Quick Stop, a gas station where his debit card was used at 8:39 p.m. on Sunday, September 4th. They pulled the store's surveillance footage and found the final recorded images of Carson Sistrunk alive. The footage showed Carson's Ford Raptor pulling up to a fuel pump. Carson stepped out of the driver's side, walked inside the store, and paid for gas. A figure was visible in the passenger seat, but glare across the windshield prevented a clear identification from the camera angle alone. While Carson was inside the store, a man approached the passenger side of the window and spoke briefly with the person sitting there. The exchange was short, and the body language between the two suggested familiarity. Carson returned to the Raptor, climbed in, and drove away into the night. What happened after he left the quick stop remained known only to the individual sitting in the passenger seat. Investigators believed that individual was Sierra Inscoe, but suspicion alone wasn't enough. They needed proof. Investigators circulated still frames from the quick stop footage among residents in the New Hebron area. The man who had approached the passenger window was identified as a local by the nickname Curly. When contacted, Curly cooperated immediately and without reservation. He identified the person in the passenger seat as Sierra Inscoe, stating he recognized her clearly through the interaction at the window. Curly confirmed that he knew Inscoe personally and that the two had dated in the past. He also told agents that Carson had mentioned plans to spend the rest of the evening with Inscoe after they left the gas station. Curly was quickly ruled out as a suspect, but his identification placed Inscoe inside Carson's truck on the night of the murder, directly contradicting her claim that she had never met him. Her story was falling apart one witness at a time. The evidence against Inscoe was mounting, but it was not enough yet. The blood found in the truck had not been processed through the crime lab, meaning investigators could not definitively prove it belonged to Carson. Without that confirmation, the physical evidence remained circumstantial, too thin to support a murder charge. The lead investigator consulted with the district attorney's office. The conclusion was clear but difficult to accept. There was insufficient evidence to hold Inscoe on anything beyond the vehicle theft charge, and she could not be detained indefinitely on suspicion alone. So, Inscoe was released from custody. While the lab processed the physical evidence, the MBI turned to the truck's own data to reconstruct Inscoe's movements in the days between the murder and her initial detention. Carson's Ford Raptor was equipped with a telemetrics system, an onboard computer that logged GPS coordinates at regular intervals. The MBI extracted this data and mapped the vehicle's route across southern Mississippi. Armed with those coordinates, agents identified surveillance cameras along the truck's path. 3 additional locations produced footage of Inscoe behind the wheel, alone in every frame. She was captured at Ward's Restaurant, a fast food drive-thru in Prentiss, and at a Hibbett's sports store in Maggie, Mississippi, where she purchased new clothes and shoes. Her demeanor was relaxed and unhurried, a woman running errands in a truck that belonged to the man she was suspected of killing. During this same period, Inscoe visited a friend's home and asked to rinse out the truck, claiming she had hit an animal on the road. On September 10, 2022, the results from the state crime lab and the private DNA laboratory in Jackson came back. The blood recovered from the truck bed, the undercarriage, the tailgate, and the rear windshield all matched a single donor. That donor was Carson's Sistrunk. The female clothing found in bags inside the trunk also carried Carson's blood, but the clothing yielded a second profile as well. DNA extracted from the neck and underarm areas of a t-shirt, regions where sweat and skin cells accumulate through prolonged contact, matched Sierra Inscoe. The shirt had been worn by her, and it was stained with Carson's blood. With these results in hand, the prosecution had what it needed. The physical evidence now tied Inscoe directly to the murder of Carson's Sistrunk, and the case could move forward. A warrant for her arrest was the next step, but first, they had to find her. In the days between her release and the DNA confirmation, Inscoe did exactly what her history predicted. She dropped out of sight entirely. Law enforcement issued alerts and began coordinating with agencies across the region, but Inscoe had no permanent address, no registered vehicle of her own, and no employment records to trace. She existed in the gaps between other people's lives, moving from one acquaintance to the next. Finding her required a different kind of investigative work, one that moved through the same digital landscape Inscoe had spent years navigating. If she was going to surface anywhere, it would be online. The lead investigator turned his attention to the people most likely to hear from her, starting with her mother. The lead investigator made contact with Inscoe's mother, who lived out of state. The mother acknowledged that she had received messages from her daughter through Facebook Messenger in the days since her release. The messages were brief, just a greeting and a short note that Inscoe was okay. Nothing in these exchanges revealed a specific location. When asked which Facebook account had sent the messages, the mother said she could not remember. The lead investigator asked to see her phone directly. After some persuasion, she agreed. He photographed the messenger conversation and identified the Facebook account Inscoe had used to reach out. It was not one of the profiles investigators had previously cataloged, but a separate account tied to another individual. The NBI's social media investigator took over from there. A subpoena was issued for the records associated with that Facebook account, compelling the platform to release login data and connection details. The IP address tied to the account's recent activity pointed to a specific residential address in Jones County, Mississippi. For the first time since her release, the NBI had a location. On September 11, 2022, a judge signed a murder warrant for Sierra Jane Inscoe. The lead investigator assembled a team and drove to the residence in Jones County identified through the IP trace. They arrived and surrounded the property, positioning themselves at every exit before making contact. The woman who lived at home and owned the Facebook account answered the front door. When investigators asked whether Inscoe was inside, the woman nodded. The lead investigator looked past her and saw Inscoe peeking through the interior doorway. He told her directly that it was time to go. Inscoe stepped outside without resistance. She raised her hands, walked toward the investigators, and surrendered calmly. As she was taken into custody, she told the lead investigator that she knew he was coming for her. She was placed under arrest at 2:49 p.m. on September 11th, exactly 7 days after Carson Sistrunk was last seen alive at the New Hebron Quick Stop. A judge subsequently denied her bond, determining that Inscoe posed a danger to the community and presented a significant flight risk given her transient history and lack of ties to any fixed location. She was transported to the county jail to await formal charges. After being processed and booked, Inscoe made an unexpected request. She asked to speak with the lead investigator again, one-on-one. He agreed, and the interview was conducted at the detention facility. Inscoe did not offer a confession. Instead, she doubled down on the story she had been telling since the day the truck was found. She maintained that a man named C-Money was responsible for everything. This time, however, she added new layers to the fiction. She gave his first name as Corey, claimed that he was involved in drug trafficking operations, and alleged that gang affiliations were part of his background. The lead investigator listened, took notes, and treated the lead as though it were real. The NBI contacted the FBI, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Mississippi Bureau of Narcotics, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Each agency ran its own independent search through every available database. Not one of them returned a match for anyone fitting the description Inscoe had provided. No individual named Corey with the street name of C-Money appeared in any arrest record, intelligence file, or active case across any federal or state agency. The person she described did not exist. The question of whether Inscoe had acted alone also remained open, given Carson's size. The forensic reconstruction provided the most plausible answer that Inscoe had used the truck's speed and braking force to eject the body from the bed. Every known associate from her time in Jefferson Davis County had been interviewed, and every alibi held. No evidence of any kind pointed to a second person there at the scene. With Inscoe in custody and the DNA evidence confirmed, the legal process began. She was initially held on a motor vehicle theft charge, the only count that could be filed immediately while prosecutors assembled the murder case. In August 2023, nearly a year after the murder, a grand jury formally indicted Inscoe on a charge of murder. A trial date was set for July 2024, nearly 2 years after the murder. But before it began, Inscoe changed course. She entered a guilty plea to the charge of second-degree murder, eliminating the need for a jury trial. The volume of evidence against her left little room for a viable defense. The judge sentenced Inscoe to 40 years in the Mississippi Department of Corrections. Of that sentence, 35 years are mandatory and must be served in full before any possibility of release. The remaining 5 years are suspended and would be served under post-release supervision once the prison term ends. If Inscoe serves the full mandatory portion without additional charges or complications, she will be released in her mid-50s, having entered the system at 22 years old.